السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مرة أخرى أرحب بالسيد فرانسيس ريتشاردوني، نائب رئيس مركز الأطلنطي ومدير مركز رفيق الحريري للشرق الأوسط. Most welcome again, sir.
Thank you.
So, as promised before the break, we'll be coming back to Egypt. Do you think Egypt is on the right track in its combat or in its fight against terrorism?
It appears to me that Egypt is determined, has the capability, and that the terrorists can never achieve their objective. They may cause terrible damage, they may take some lives, they may hurt people, but they will never defeat Egypt, ever.
Have you met ever with President Sisi?
I did have the privilege of knowing him a little bit. He was on the general staff when I was here. I didn't really have much to do. And I've had a couple recent contacts. I had the privilege of being in a small group of Americans he met with in New York in September when he was there for the General Assembly. And perhaps oddly, while I was ambassador to Turkey, he visited in May of 2013. And coincidentally,
he visited Turkey.
He did visit Turkey, and I saw him twice. Once at the Defense Expo in Istanbul, where there are American manufacturers, defense manufacturers, and I met him there. And then when I was leaving President Gül's office one day, he was coming in for a meeting with President Gül, and we just exchanged a few words in Egyptian. And that was only 2 months
before the revolution.
Before the second revolution here. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me ask you about somebody I'm sure you know much better, closer, I mean, Miss Faiza Abu Naga?
I do know Miss Faiza Abu Naga.
What do you think of her?
I think she's a passionate, committed Egyptian patriot with a huge and impressive credentials in her government in service of her country. That's what I think of her, with great respect.
Do you think this massive attack by the New York Times against her appointment as advisor to the President for National Security was justified?
You know, I think ad hominem, or for that matter, ad feminem, attacks on people don't serve even when anyone makes a case. And in this case, I think it was not justified, and just also not becoming, and not the right thing.
Is it possible, as being said, that her appointment was just done or had taken place to tease the Americans?
That's a very self-centered thing to imagine, it seems to me. Of course not. Of course not. I think that's just silly.
All right. Back to Egypt's fight against terrorism, Egypt rebuilding its economy at this stage, Egypt in dire need of all investments rather than help in this respect. We had a delegation visiting Egypt last week of 66 American companies. Already 40 of them exist in Egypt. How do you think the commitment, the American commitment, will be like in the future economically, since the Hariri Center works also on economic issues?
We do. I believe economic prosperity is the key to stability and advancement, including democratic advancement. And there's no substitute for private investment and private business activity. So in the most advanced economies, governments try to facilitate and remove obstructions and problems to investment. We try to improve transparency, make clear the rules of the road, what are the rules that businesses have to abide by. We try to make sure that labor standards are high, so workers are protected and treated with dignity, so that workplaces are safe, so that workers can organize and call for their rights. We uphold environmental standards. There are important roles for governments to play in partnership with business so that business can flourish. So from what I understand, it was a very successful visit of business people here. When I was in office here as ambassador, I worked very closely with the Egyptian American business community, that is to say with the American Chamber of Commerce in Egypt.
And the council.
And exactly right. And we met frequently and talked about these issues. Even business competitors, people in the same field who were competing with each other, had a common interest in upholding those standards. Protection of intellectual property, for example, is very important for your entertainment industry. Egypt was a leader in the entire Arab world, in not only the cinema, but in music.
Yep.
And those days can return, and the Egyptian productivity, great Egyptian creative genius can flourish again with protection of that genius. If you want to advance in pharmaceuticals, you need to have transparency and clear rules of the road.
Which years exactly did you serve here as an ambassador?
2005 to 2008.
Yeah, you really remind me of the good old days when we had the luxury to talk about intellectual property. These were issues that we used to advocate on television, and we used to talk about them, that we can't find room for them ever since the 25th of January 2011, because ever since we've been, what do you call it, you've been put into a blender. I mean, the whole nation is into a blender, and we can't get out of that. When do you think Egyptians can get out of that? And don't tell me when they decide to.
The leadership and the vision has to come from within. If you want our opinions and advice, you'll get lots of American opinions and advice, more than you really want. So be careful what you ask for. But please be sure, Egypt has many friends in the United States, in the government, outside of government, certainly in the private sector. People have very fond memories of doing business here, visiting, and wish to come again, come back, do more business. So people will be watching closely. These trade delegations are an important part of it. The businessmen wanted to know, if I invest more here, will my investment be safe? Will it be protected? Will it be valued? Can we prosper together? These are question marks, and truly only Egyptians can answer them.
Why do you think Republicans are more considerate of what's happening in Egypt than the Democrats are? Is it because the administration is a Democratic administration? I know you're a Republican, and
Really?
Okay.
That would shock my Republican friends. My Democrat friends too.
You're not a Republican?
I'm truly nonpartisan. You know, I spent a lifetime, a professional lifetime, a career serving Democratic presidents, Republican presidents. I was always proud to serve them, very honored to do so. And I didn't see the U.S. national interest changing very much, the definition of the U.S. national interest in foreign policy matters, changing very much from one administration to another. The emphases were different, the styles were different, the initiatives varied. But I was always proud to serve, and like soldiers, diplomats serve country rather than party. And I've taken, that reflects my private feelings as well. Ask me about an issue, I'll tell you my personal feeling.
I'll withdraw that you're a Republican, because
Please.
This is a misconception that I have.
Well, different friends would be flattered and pleased, others would be horrified.
But let me ask you this. Why are the Republican congressmen more understanding of what is actually happening in Egypt from our point of view? Is it because of the internal U.S. politics? Is it because, okay, the Democrats are supporting the Brotherhood, so we, the Republicans, will support the Egyptian nation?
It would be honestly hard for me to generalize and say Republicans are more this way or that way, Democrats this way or that way with respect to Egypt. I see individual personalities in play. I see members of Congress who are more informed and more dedicated to staying informed, who care more about one issue or another, whether it be regional peace and security, whether it be counterterrorism, whether it be free trade, whether it be promoting democracy and human rights. And they say what they feel and what they believe. Some take the trouble and time to come visit places like Egypt or Turkey when I was there and see for themselves. When I was in office, I really valued that. And I always encouraged members of Congress to come and see for themselves. In places like Egypt, where there's such warm hospitality, despite the anger in the media, which keeps them away, makes people worried about coming. when they come,
In our media or in American
both.
media?
Well, more honestly,
More American media.
No, honestly,
you don't see us there.
honestly, in the Egyptian media, there is a lot of the conspiracy thinking. Who is the mastermind? Why are the Americans supporting the Muslim Brothers, or there's something that?
Why are the Americans supporting the Muslim Brotherhood? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and to Americans, it seems honestly, it does make us laugh, because the idea that we, who almost invented the idea of separation of church and state, the idea that Americans would wish to see a foreign state bring in religion to run it, it doesn't compute. It makes no sense. It's against everything we in our Constitution. It makes no sense.
Absolutely.
So
that's why we're surprised. It's against every American principle.
And it's also not true. Look, it wasn't the Americans who elected the Muslim Brothers. You had a constitutional process, you ran an election, and evidently you elected them. When you did, we as respectful friends respected your constitutional process and what sounded like the voice of the Egyptian people. Half of them, or approximately, you elected for a four-year term, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was your processes that you described and did it. It was any good diplomat.
That's why, again, Egyptians are surprised. This has happened, and the Americans valued the principles of supporting what the people want. And then again, we've elected a president.
You have.
And the American administration is lagging behind. They're not against, but they're lagging behind. They're not that much like they're not taking us in their arms as they took the Brotherhood in their arms when they won.
We have a rough history to overcome recently, but honestly, Ossama, I would have to reject your premise. How can you say we're not paying attention or treating with friendship and respect when President Obama saw President Sisi for a good long period of time in New York? He didn't see many foreign leaders, and he took the time to have a real heart-to-heart discussion. I'm not privy to the details. I'm out of government, but from all reports, it was honest, respectful, and positive. You see Secretary Kerry and the State Department following up with supporting a trade delegation. Although they were private sector, they very much enjoyed the support of the American government. That shows me that on the American side, there's a keen interest in rebuilding across the board with Egypt, trying to restore the military-to-military conversation and relations that I remember very well. That was always, not always, since Camp David has always been a strong element of the relationship, just one of many. I see that strengthening again. I hope so.
I mean, I love seeing these issues from your eyes, because I really love those points of view that you're making, and this picture of hope in a better future based on better relations, or reading those signs, because sometimes we, the media, we don't read the signs properly, and we come to an expert like you to read the signs and say, for example, like that 1.5 hour meeting between Presidents Obama and Sisi was a real positive sign there. But would there be any anger within the United States because Egypt is now dealing with Russia in terms of arms, getting this defense network, the S-300?
We don't see a zero-sum game. You know, Egypt has to make its own decisions as to where it can get the arms it needs at the best price, and you know, you will do that. And what's compatible with your current inventory, what's compatible with your friends and allies that you might call upon at some time for assistance. These are things for your government and the American government to discuss. I'm not pretending that there aren't serious differences of view on different issues. There's just a lot of noise in the system. Americans do see things going on in Egypt in internal affairs that trouble Americans and that we see as interfering. It's
like?
The closer a government is to, obviously, is to sharing principles of democracy and human rights, the warmer and more cooperative the relations are going to be. I've had the privilege of living in your country. I know how much Egyptians care about these issues. I believe your great men of state do as well. But when you see, mass arrests and hundreds of people sentenced to death, even if it is the case that they were involved in plots against the state, those things make us all sit back and say, oh, what is going on here? What is happening? Are these the bad old days coming back?
And you felt the same when this happened in Turkey as well?
Of course, in Turkey, in any country, we know the internal affairs are up to those countries. We always support and encourage voices of greater liberalization, greater protections of human rights and dignity, greater strengthening of the rule of law. That's who we are, that's what we do, and we always do it in a respectful way. We care about these things. So, of course, you'll find people in the United States who focus on those things as their priorities. When you're the American government, you include those among the list of priorities by law as well as by policy.
We know certainly that there are many faults here, like we don't want to fall into the state that we're running into actually right now, the McCarthyism that we're going through, that you have experienced, and you know how much it has hurt you and has hurt the American people, and we are undergoing something similar that is happening here, and certainly we want to overcome that faster, the sooner the better, as you said. And as you said earlier very eloquently, that economic development will help in stability, and stability will help in overcoming these issues. And we go back to nostalgic things like intellectual property rights. All right, so let me just, before I conclude, ask you here about the region, because you are going to be even delving deeper into the issues of the region. How long do you think it will take before this region comes to a stable state? I mean, at least to get out of this liquid state that we're in.
I think it will vary from place to place around the region. Some places do not have what Egypt has, for example, the advantages of a strong national identity and a tradition of a strong civil society, of coexistence among different ethnic, sectarian groups, points of view. The national identity in Egypt is already so firmly established it's beyond debate. Other places in the region still identified by tribe or by faction, very painfully and dangerously by religious sect. Those are dangers and poisons that, thank God, you don't face here, although some people are trying to stir them up evidently and set Muslim against Muslim, Muslim against Christian. Thank God Egypt has less of a problem with those things than the others. So I'm relatively optimistic that not only stability but security, followed by prosperity, and even political democratic development will happen in Egypt. Put it this way, I think it will happen in Egypt first of all the countries in transition. And we will be, your friends in the United States will be hoping and cheering for your success, doing whatever we can to be helpful. Private citizens like myself will certainly be doing what we can to be helpful.
أشكرك على يعني ده أقول عليه إيه أكثر حجم ممكن الواحد ياخده من الصراحة من دبلوماسي محنك. فيعني أشكرك على أنك يمكن تكون خرجت عن قواعد الدبلوماسية المعتادة ولكن احتفظت بالقالب العام للدبلوماسية. أشكرك، وبما أنك هتكون موجود في منطقة الشرق الأوسط فلا بد أن زياراتك تكون كثيرة ومتكررة، ونلتقي بك دائما في القاهرة 360.
شكرا جزيلا يا أستاذ أسامة على الفرصة الظريفة دي، وإلى اللقاء إن شاء الله.
شكرا. بشكر السيد فرانسيس ريتشاردوني نائب رئيس مركز الأطلنطي ومدير مركز رفيق الحريري للشرق الأوسط، وبشكركم على المتابعة. يعني أعتقد يعني هذا اللقاء كشف الأمور أو الكثير من الأمور، وتبقى علامات الاستفهام موجودة، ولكن مع الوقت بنستكشف ما الذي يحدث حول مصر في العالم، كيف يرى العالم مصر والتطورات فيها، وأيضا التطورات في المنطقة. بشكركم وتصبحوا على خير.